My name is Samson, and this is my story. Here I am, chained in a Philistine prison, blind and cornered by my enemies. It was not always like this. Let me tell you. It was the time when the Israelites had sinned again in the eyes of the Lord. For this betrayal, Yahweh delivered the people to the Philistines, who oppressed them for 40 long years. The Philistines were an aggressive people who inhabited the land southwest of Israel, between the Mediterranean Sea and the Jordan River. They were known as the peoples of the sea because of their historic maritime tradition. During this time, the Philistines had established themselves from the coast of Canaan inland, building a powerful civilization ruled by tyrants in each city. In those days, there lived in the city of Zorah a man named Manoah from the tribe of Dan. His wife could not conceive, and they had no children. One day, something extraordinary happened. The angel of the Lord appeared to this woman and announced, "Although you have not been able to have children, soon you will conceive and give birth to a son. Therefore be careful. You must not drink wine or any other alcoholic beverage, nor eat any forbidden food. You will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and his hair must never be cut, for he will be consecrated to God as a Nazirite from birth. He will begin to rescue Israel from the Philistines." The angel of the Lord who appeared to my mother generally seemed to be a man, but his countenance was like that of an angel of God. The message was clear. I would be a Nazirite. A Nazirite's vow is something extremely sacred. Under this vow, people are considered especially dedicated to God, letting their hair grow uncut, not drinking wine, not eating grape products, and avoiding any contact with anything dead. Nazirites do not eat anything impure according to Israelite laws about clean and unclean foods. My case was special. I would have this vow from the womb. My mother also had to share this vow during the time she carried me in her womb. In the social structures of my time, the announcement that the child would be male was especially well received. A son would not only continue the family name, but would provide leadership in the home and in the community. My mother ran and told my father that a man of God, who looked like an angel, had appeared before her and told her she would conceive and give birth to a son. My father, amazed, prayed to the Lord, asking for the angel to return to give more instructions about me. "Lord, please, let the man of God return again and give more instructions about the son who is about to be born," he begged fervently. God heard my father's prayer, and the angel of God appeared again to my mother while she was sitting in the field. She ran quickly to find my father, who asked, "When your words come true, what kind of rules should govern the child's life and work?" The angel of the Lord answered, "Make sure your wife follows the instructions I gave her. She must not eat grapes or raisins, drink wine or any other alcoholic beverage, or eat any forbidden food." I was to be set apart and reserved for God's will. The angel honored my father's request for confirmation, but did not respond to his request to know the future. He simply called him to obey what God had already told them. Then the angel of the Lord did something wonderful. He ascended in the flame of the sacrifice toward heaven while my parents watched in amazement. My father, fearful, said to my mother, "We will certainly die, for we have seen God." But she, with wisdom, replied, "If the Lord wanted to kill us, he would not have accepted our offering, nor would he have shown us all these things, nor would he have told us such promises." The prophecy was fulfilled, and I was born. My mother called me Samson, a name derived from the Hebrew word meaning little son. As I grew, the Lord blessed me, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir in me. From my birth, it was clear that I was destined for greatness. As a child, I possessed a unique strength that surpassed that of any common man. However, like all men, I was not immune to the temptations of the world. In a sense, I was truly a man of my time, a man divided between the divine call and human desires. The scorching sun of Timnah fell on my head as I walked along the dusty paths. One day, When I was visiting this Philistine city, something unexpected happened. A Philistine woman caught my attention. It was a case of love at first sight. I saw her and immediately knew I wanted to make her my wife. When I returned home, I told my father and mother, "A young Philistine woman in Timnah has caught my attention. I want to marry her. Get her for me." Timnah was a Philistine city in the land of Canaan, east of our camp. The expression of concern on my parents' faces was evident. "Isn't there not one woman in our tribe or among all the Israelites with whom you can marry? Why must you go to the pagan Philistines to find a wife?" They questioned me with anguish. Their concerns were valid. In Israel, marriages were generally performed within the clan or tribe. Although there were no laws against marrying someone from another Israelite tribe, for an Israelite to marry a Philistine woman represented a special problem, a dangerous compromise. But I insisted, "Get her for me. She pleases me." She was right in my eyes, though she contradicted the divine will. Love at first sight is a powerful thing, but dangerous. Although arranged marriages were not mandatory, that was the common practice at that time. Arranged marriages in my time often represented alliances designed to ensure the continuity of families. My parents worried about what Moses had warned. "We will not marry them, nor give our daughters to their sons, nor take their daughters for our sons, because they will turn our sons away from following the Lord to serve other gods, and the Lord's anger will be kindled against us and will destroy us quickly." But I still wanted her, and after much insistence, my parents agreed. My family had to travel with me to Timnah to seek my future wife. The day came and we left together. At one point during the journey, I separated from the group near the vineyards of Timnah, a place where Nazarites like me should not have been, as we were forbidden all contact with grape products. Suddenly, something terrifying happened. A young lion attacked me ferociously. At that crucial moment, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon me, and I tore the lion's jaws with my bare hands, as one who tears a young goat. I was unique during my time. Asiatic lions were common throughout the Fertile Crescent. In fact, the lion symbolized chaos and the untamed world in all its forms. But for me, that fierce lion was like a simple kid. I left that place, and curiously, I did not tell my father or mother about this extraordinary event. We had to complete our mission. When I arrived in Timnah, I spoke with the woman and was very satisfied with her. Everything seemed to be going well. Now I could go home and return later for my own wedding. When the time for marriage came, I had to leave home once more. During my journey, I passed by the same place where I had killed the lion some time ago. To my surprise, I discovered that a swarm of bees had built a honeycomb in the lion's carcass and produced honey. I gathered some honey with my hands and ate on the way, a reward for a victor. I also gave some to my father and mother, and they ate. But I still didn't tell them that I had taken the honey from the carcass of a lion. I did not reveal my secret because it violated my Nazirite vow, which stated that a Nazirite should never touch a dead body. I was beginning a dangerous game of compromises with my divine calling, yielding to personal desires without considering the consequences of my actions. The wedding was approaching, and with it, events that would test not only my physical strength, but also my character and my destiny as a deliverer of Israel. While my father made the final arrangements for the wedding, I organized a feast in Timnah, as was the custom for young men of the elite. It would be 7 days of continuous celebration. It was literally a drinking party, a 7-day festivity in the house of the bride's parents, culminating in the consummation of the marriage. The seriousness of the matter for me was accentuated by the fact that my Nazirite status specifically prohibited me from consuming products derived from grapes, including the wine that flowed abundantly at these celebrations. In those times, people were officially married when their families reached an agreement. The dowry and the bride price were exchanged, and the marriage was officially celebrated. Then the marriage was consummated, and the two became husband and wife in the eyes of all. When the bride's parents saw me, they selected 30 young Philistines from the city as my companions. I was the man of the moment, with my own captive audience. Seeing an opportunity for an intellectual challenge, I said to them, "Let me tell you a riddle. If you solve it during these 7 days of celebration, I will give you 30 tunics of fine linen and 30 sets of festive clothes. But if you cannot solve it, then you must give me 30 tunics of fine linen and 30 sets of festive clothes." The young Philistines, intrigued by the challenge and the reward, immediately accepted. "All right, let's hear your riddle." Then I presented the riddle. Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. This riddle was based on my personal experience with the lion and the bees, a secret that only I knew. 3 days passed, and the young Philistines were still puzzled, unable to decipher the hidden meaning of my words. Frustration began to grow among them at the possibility of losing the bet. On the 4th day, desperate and fearing humiliation, the Philistines resorted to darker tactics. They approached my wife and said with threats, "Seduce your husband to explain the riddle to us, or we will burn your father's house with you inside. Did you invite us to this feast just to impoverish us?" Fear seized my new wife, who came to me crying inconsolably, "You don't love me. You hate me. You gave a riddle to my people, but you did not tell me the answer." My response was firm. "I haven't even given the answer to my father or mother. Why should I tell it to you?" However, she did not give up. She continued crying every time she was with me, persisting this way for the rest of the celebration. Finally, on the 7th day, exhausted by her constant crying and harassment, I revealed the answer to her because she was tormenting me incessantly. Immediately, she explained the riddle to the young Philistines. So, before sunset on the 7th day, the men of the city came to me with a triumphant air and gave me the answer. What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? My Philistine wife's willingness to ally with her people against me was a great pain to my heart. With barely contained anger, I replied, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have solved my riddle." My wife had achieved what she wanted through manipulation, but she lost my respect in the process. I was obligated to pay the debt for having lost the bet, but I decided to do it at the expense of the Philistines. The Spirit of the Lord came upon me with power, and I went down to the city of Ashkelon, where I executed 30 Philistines, took their belongings, and gave their clothes to the men who had solved my riddle. But I was still furious about what had happened. My wife's betrayal had touched the deepest part of my being. Instead of consummating the marriage and beginning a life together, I returned home to live with my father and mother, leaving behind my wife and the humiliation I had suffered. The first act of my story as a deliverer of Israel had begun, but not in the way anyone would have expected. My superhuman strength had manifested, but driven by anger and revenge, not by a clear divine purpose. The Philistines had suffered their first defeat at my hands, but the price had been my own marriage and the beginning of a personal enmity that would have devastating consequences for all involved. After some time, when my anger had subsided, I decided to visit my wife during the wheat harvest season. I brought a young goat as a gift, a traditional gesture of reconciliation. "I will enter my wife's room," I said with determination, finally wanting to consummate our marriage. But to my surprise and humiliation, her father would not let me enter. "I really thought you hated her," he exclaimed nervously. "So I gave her in marriage to your best man. But look, her younger sister is even more beautiful than she is. Marry her instead." The news hit me like lightning. My wife had been given to another man, to my own best man. I had won the battle against the lion, but I had lost the war for my marriage. Anger began to boil within me again, more intense than ever. "This time I cannot be blamed for what I will do to the Philistines," I declared with fury. My anger was truly unleashed against her people. I took my time and went out to capture 300 foxes. I had proven to be the master of beasts, first effortlessly dominating a lion and now capturing and manipulating 300 foxes. I tied their tails in pairs and placed a lit torch in each pair of tails. Then I let the foxes run freely through the Philistines' grain fields. The fire spread quickly, devouring everything in its path. I burned all their grain, including the sheaves and uncut grain. I also destroyed their vineyards and olive groves, causing total economic devastation to my enemies. When the Philistines discovered who had done this, they asked with rage, "Who did this?" The answer was immediate: Samson, the Timnite's son-in-law, because he took his wife and gave her to his companion. Enraged, the Philistines went and captured my ex-wife and her father and executed them cruelly, burning them alive. Upon discovering what had happened, I made a solemn vow: "For this I will not rest until I am avenged on you." I was in a complete spiral of anger and revenge. First I was deceived, then my wife married another, and now she had been brutally executed. This is the bitter story of reprisals trying to avenge the wrongs committed. I attacked the Philistines with great fury and violence, causing a massive slaughter among them. Afterward, I took refuge in the cave of the rock of Etam. The Philistines did not sit idly by. In retaliation, they camped in Judah and spread near the city of Lehi. When the men of Judah saw them, they asked fearfully, "Why are you attacking us?" The Philistines responded clearly, "We have come to capture Samson. We have come to avenge what he did to us." Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to catch me in the cave where I was hiding. When they arrived, they said to me reproachfully, "Don't you realize that the Philistines rule over us? What are you doing to provoke them against us?" I responded simply, "I only did to them what they did to me." But the men of Judah were more concerned with appeasing their oppressors than with supporting a potential deliverer. "We have come to bind you and deliver you to the Philistines," they declared. Although I was strong, I was not invincible, and I understood my people's desperate situation. I agreed to surrender, but I made them promise, "Swear that you will not kill me yourselves." They replied, "We will only bind you and deliver you to the Philistines. We will not kill you." The fact that soldiers from my own tribe delivered me to the Philistines showed how much my people were under enemy oppression. They preferred to please their oppressors rather than support their potential deliverer. I submitted to them. They bound me with 2 new ropes and took me from the rock. Upon reaching Lehi, the Philistines came shouting triumphantly, believing they had finally captured the man who had caused them so much harm. But at that critical moment, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon me. With superhuman strength, I broke the ropes on my arms as if they were burned flax threads, and they fell from my wrists as if they had never existed. I looked around for a weapon and found the jawbone of a recently dead donkey. I took it and began my attack. With this improvised weapon, I killed 1,000 Philistines. I was a one-man army, driven by divine strength. After the battle, I exclaimed with pride, "With a donkey's jawbone, I have made piles of them. With a donkey's jawbone, I have killed 1,000 men." When I finished my boasting, I threw away the jawbone, and the place was called Jawbone Hill in commemoration of this extraordinary victory. After this great feat, I officially became a judge of Israel. I belonged to a select group of people in history called judges, although that word does not accurately reflect the meaning of my work. In Hebrew, the word means problem solvers. We could say that I belonged to a select group of people whose mission was to save God's people both from themselves and from their enemies. A judge is defined by his achievements, and I had begun to fulfill my destiny as a deliverer of Israel. I judged Israel for 20 years, although during this period the Philistines still dominated the land. My story was far from over, and the most difficult trials were yet to come. After years as a judge of Israel, my fame had grown as much as my exploits. The Philistines feared me, but also sought me incessantly. Despite my position as deliverer and judge, I was still a man with human weaknesses, especially with respect to women. One day, I decided to travel to Gaza, one of the main Philistine cities, a risky act considering my enmity with these people. Gaza was a Philistine fortress with imposing walls and vigilant guards. Entering there as an Israelite, and especially as Samson the judge, was looking for trouble directly. During my stay in Gaza, I saw a prostitute and, yielding to my carnal desires, had relations with her. This decision revealed once again my tendency to follow my impulses without considering my divine calling or the consequences of my actions. As a Nazirite consecrated to God, these actions contradicted the spirit of my vow, although they did not technically violate the specific restrictions on wine or cutting my hair. The inhabitants of Gaza soon learned of my presence in the city. "Samson is here," the word spread quickly. Recognizing the opportunity to capture their most feared enemy, they surrounded the place where I was and waited all night at the city gate to ambush me. They remained silent during the night, saying among themselves, "At dawn, we will kill him." They thought they had the advantage, that they could finally eliminate the man who had killed so many of theirs and had caused so much destruction. However, they did not count on my strength or my cunning. I rested there until midnight, at which point I got up. Instead of trying to sneak away or confront my enemies in combat, I decided to demonstrate my power in a spectacular way. I went to the main gate of the city, the same one that was guarded by the Philistine guards. Without hesitation, I took the doors of the city entrance, the 2 posts that held them, and the bar that secured them. I pulled out the entire complete structure and placed it on my shoulders before carrying it to the top of the hill that is directly opposite Hebron, several kilometers away. These gates that I carried were not common doors. War chariots needed to pass through the gates of important fortifications, and these doors had to be wide and strong enough. The gates themselves were composed of a pair of solid wooden double doors to prevent an adversary from entering easily. The doors were made of heavy planks and were secured on the side by a horizontal beam that slid through slots in the frames. In addition, they were reinforced by wooden posts whose ends rotated in stone sockets. The Gaza gates that I pulled from their sockets and placed on my shoulders weighed at least 400 or 500 kilograms. This act of superhuman strength served as a public humiliation for the Philistines and a demonstration that their best defenses were useless against me. They had planned to kill me at dawn, but before they could do so, I had robbed them of the security of their own walls, leaving the city exposed and vulnerable. The story of this extraordinary event spread quickly throughout the region. The Israelites saw it as another sign that God was with their judge, while the Philistines intensified their hatred and their determination to find a way to neutralize me. Despite this impressive demonstration of physical strength, my moral weakness was still evident. I had risked my life for an encounter with a prostitute, endangering not only my own safety, but also my mission as a deliverer of Israel. This pattern of behavior, this contradiction between my physical strength and my moral weakness, would continue to define my life and eventually lead to my downfall. After all this, anyone might think that I had learned my lessons about Philistine women and the dangers of carnal desire. But my pride and passions would lead me down an even more treacherous path, toward an encounter that would change the course of my life forever. It was during one of my travels that I met Delilah, a woman whose beauty could entangle even the firmest souls. She lived in the valley of Sorek, in Philistine territory, and her cunning was as impressive as her beauty. Without learning from my past mistakes, I fell in love with her, yielding once again to my desires. I wanted to be used by God, but I also gave in to the seduction of sin. The Philistine rulers, attentive to any opportunity to capture me, saw in this new relationship their great opportunity. They approached Delilah and offered her a fortune for my head. "We will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver if you discover the secret of his strength and how we can bind him and subdue him. Delilah was also deeply in love, but not with me, but with money. The offer was tempting. 1,100 shekels was equivalent to more than 63 kilograms of silver. Without hesitation, she accepted the deal, willing to betray my feelings for wealth. With feigned curiosity, Delilah asked me, "Please, tell me what makes you so strong and what it would take to bind you securely." Naively, I decided to turn this into a game without revealing my true secret. I answered, "If they bind me with 7 new bowstrings that have not yet dried, I will become as weak as any other person." Delilah bound me with the strings while I slept. She had hidden some men in one of the inner rooms of her house. When she was ready, she shouted, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." But upon waking, I broke the bowstrings like a piece of string crackles when it burns with fire. Thus, the secret of my strength was not discovered. Frustrated, Delilah complained to me, "You are making fun of me and telling me lies. Now please tell me how you can be bound securely." Delilah knew that I was strong, but she also knew that I could be bound by something, and that was really true. Continuing with my dangerous game, I replied, "If they bind me with new ropes that have never been used, I will become as weak as any other person." So she took new ropes and bound me with them. The men were hidden in the inner room as before, and again she shouted, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." But once again, I broke the ropes from my arms as if they were threads. Then Delilah, increasingly impatient, said, "You are making fun of me and giving me lies. Now tell me how you can be bound securely." I replied with another lie. "If you weave the 7 braids of my hair into the fabric of your loom and tighten it with the shuttle, I will become as weak as any other person." While I slept, she wove the 7 braids of my hair into the fabric and tightened it with the shuttle. Again she shouted, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." But I woke up, pulled off the shuttle and the loom, and freed my hair. Delilah began to despair. She complained vehemently, "How can you say I love you when you do not share your secrets with me? You have mocked me 3 times and still have not told me what makes you so strong." She tormented me with her crying day after day until I was sick of hearing her. Finally, exhausted by her insistence, I made the fatal mistake of sharing my secret with her. Never has my hair been cut, since I have been dedicated to God as a Nazirite from my birth. If my head were shaved, I would lose my strength and become as weak as any other person. Delilah realized that I had finally told her the truth. She called the Philistine rulers. "Come back once more, because he has finally told me his secret." The Philistine rulers returned with the promised money in their hands. With a calculated betrayal, Delilah made me sleep with my head on her lap and then called a man to shave the 7 locks of my hair. In this way, she began to bring me down, and my strength left me completely. Then she shouted, "Samson, the Philistines have come to capture you." When I woke up, I thought, I will do as before and free myself. But I did not realize that the Lord had left me. I didn't know that things were different now. I had lived in compromise for so long that I thought it would never make a difference in my life. At that moment, my strength disappeared, leaving me at the mercy of those who sought my ruin. Chained with chains, a once powerful man reduced to a mere mortal, I could only watch while my captors celebrated their triumph. The Philistines captured me and, in an act of extreme cruelty, gouged out my eyes. I would never see the light of day for the rest of my life. This was indeed a cruel and symbolic punishment. It is ironic that I was first blinded by my eyes in a figurative sense. My inability to control my attraction to women led me to this situation. I insisted on the freedom to do what I wanted, but that left me without any freedom. Sin has its wages, and this was my payday. My sin left me blind, in captivity, and enslaved. Before, my captivity and slavery were only internal, but eventually they became evident externally, manifested in my physical condition. They took me to Gaza, where I was chained with bronze chains and forced to grind grain in prison. The great judge of Israel, the man of superhuman strength, was now a simple slave, blind and humiliated, performing the work that normally animals or women of lower rank did. The Philistines believed they had forever neutralized their greatest enemy. What they didn't know was that my story wasn't over yet, and that my greatest act of deliverance for Israel was yet to come, albeit at a terrible price. The walls of the prison in Gaza were cold and damp. The constant sound of the millstone that I pushed day after day was my only company, along with the occasional taunts of my captors. "Where is your strength now, Samson?" they mocked as they watched me perform the most degrading tasks. Darkness was my constant companion. The loss of my eyes had plunged me into a world of shadows where I could only feel, hear, and remember. Each day was a torture, not only physical, but also spiritual. I wondered where the God was who had given me so much strength, the God to whom I had been consecrated from before my birth. In the solitude of my cell, I began to reflect on my life. I remembered the angel's announcement to my mother, my upbringing as a Nazirite, and all the victories I had achieved against the Philistines. But I also remembered my multiple failures, my weakness for Philistine women, my excessive pride, my disobedience to the Nazirite laws, and finally, the betrayal of my secret to Delilah. My calloused hands turned the millstone, day after day, month after month. My body, once powerful and feared, was now weak and marked by scars and mistreatment. My hair, a symbol of my covenant with God, had been cut, although it was now beginning to grow again. During this time of captivity, I experienced something I had never truly felt: humility. Stripped of everything that made me special, of my strength, of my vision, of my freedom, I finally began to understand what it meant to depend completely on God. The Philistines considered me a neutralized threat, a war trophy, an example for all those who dared to defy them. They kept me alive as a symbol of their victory over the God of Israel. "Our God Dagon has delivered our enemy into our hands," they proclaimed in their celebrations. Despite the darkness that surrounded me, something began to change within me. In the depths of my humiliation, I found a new connection with the God whom I had served so imperfectly. My prayers, previously scarce and superficial, now arose from the depths of my broken soul. "Lord God of Israel, remember me," I whispered in the darkness of my cell. "If you have abandoned me forever, I accept it as just punishment for my sins. But if there is still a purpose for me, if I can still serve as an instrument of deliverance for your people, give me a sign." One day, while performing my monotonous task of grinding grain, I absent-mindedly placed my hand on my head and felt something surprising. My hair was growing again. Later, when touching my beard, I found it rough and abundant. A flash of hope illuminated my darkened heart. Yes, it is coming back," I thought with barely contained excitement. "Everything will be fine soon." I would not regain my eyes. That was impossible. But my hair, the physical symbol of my covenant with God, was growing again. With it, I felt that my connection with the Lord was also being renewed. My sin had made me a miserable loser, but now I understood that I would regain my strength again because my hair was growing. I would be able to deliver one last blow for my people and for my God. The Philistines, in their arrogance, did not notice this change. For them, I continued to be the same blind and weak prisoner, an attraction to mock and exhibit. They could not see the internal transformation that was occurring, nor the plan that was beginning to form in my mind. In this time of reflection and spiritual renewal, I finally understood that my true strength did not come simply from my long hair, but from my relationship with God. The hair was only an external symbol of an internal covenant. My mistake had been to believe that I could violate the spirit of that covenant while maintaining its external aspects. As my hair grew, so did my determination. One day, the Philistines would pay for everything they had done, not only to me, but to all Israel. And that day was approaching faster than anyone could imagine. The Philistine rulers were holding a great festival in honor of their god Dagon. The atmosphere was one of celebration and jubilation as they prepared to make sacrifices and praise their deity. "Our God has given us victory over our enemy Samson," they proclaimed with pride. Dagon, also known as Dagon, was one of the oldest deities in Mesopotamia and was depicted as a creature half man, half fish. He was considered the father of all other gods, which is why he was widely worshipped in what we call the cradle of civilization, where agriculture is believed to have first begun, also known as the Fertile Crescent. The statue of Dagon resembled a giant man. Some representations showed him as a merman, a human being with fish characteristics below the waist. Some scholars have called him a fish god, which makes sense given his association with the Philistines and their location along the coast. The Philistines continued to worship Dagon during my time. His son Baal was venerated in various ways throughout the land. Dagon was worshipped in temples that could be found all over Mesopotamia. According to the Bible, the cities of Beth Dagon, Gaza, and Ashdod were home to some of the most important temples. He was worshipped through offerings and by participating in festivals like the one that was taking place now. When the people saw me being dragged into the temple, they praised their God, saying, "Our God has delivered our enemy into our hands. The one who killed so many of us is now under our power." The followers of Dagon transmitted a direct message to everyone in the land. "Our God is stronger than the God of Israel, because we conquered Samson." My disobedience had led others to deny and mock Yahweh, the only true God. Half drunk from the wine and the excitement of the festival, the people demanded, "Bring Samson so he can entertain us." So I was taken out of prison to entertain the crowd, and they made me stand between the columns that supported the roof of the temple. The Philistines continued to mock me in that great display, using a boy to watch over me and guide me through the space. The temple was completely full of people. All the Philistine rulers were there, and there were men and women both inside and on the roof, watching the show and laughing at my humiliation. I estimated that there were about 3,000 people in total. At that crucial moment, I asked the young servant who was guiding me, "Place my hands against the columns that support the temple. I want to lean on them." The boy, suspecting nothing, did as I asked. With my hands firmly placed on the two central columns, I closed my blind eyes and raised a silent but intense prayer to the Lord. "Sovereign Lord, remember me again. O God, please strengthen me once more. With one blow, allow me to pay the Philistines for the loss of my two eyes." This was the end of the road for me, my chance for redemption. I had wanted to be used by God, but had also given in to the seduction of sin. Now, in my last act, I would seek to fulfill my divine purpose. I felt renewed strength flowing through my body, the same superhuman strength I had once used to tear apart lions and kill 1,000 men with a donkey's jawbone. It was the strength of God, granted not by my hair itself, but by my renewed faith and submission to His will. Pushing with all my strength, with every fiber of my being, I begged, "Let me die with the Philistines." The columns began to give way under my pressure. The sound of cracking stone filled the temple, causing first confusion and then panic among the attendees. In a terrible instant, the central columns collapsed. The enormous roof of the temple, overloaded with the weight of the people who were on it, came crashing down with a deafening roar. Thousands of Philistines, including all their leaders, were crushed in seconds, and I with them. My last act as a judge of Israel was my greatest victory against the Philistines. I killed more in my death than those I had killed during my entire life. The Temple of Dagon, symbol of Philistine power, became a mass grave for its worshippers, finally proving that Yahweh, not Dagon, was the true and almighty God. My family, upon learning of what happened, came and recovered my body from among the rubble. They took me back to the land of my fathers and buried me in the tomb of my father Manoah, between Zorah and Eshtaol. I had judged Israel for 20 years, and although my life was full of contradictions and failures, in the end, I fulfilled my divine purpose as a deliverer of my people. The news of the destruction of Dagon's temple and the death of the Philistine leaders spread quickly throughout Israel. What had begun as a victory celebration for the Philistines had become their greatest disaster. Thousands of their nobles and leaders had perished under the rubble, including all their main rulers. This devastating blow to the Philistine leadership provided Israel with a respite from the oppression they had suffered for decades. Although the Philistines would continue to be enemies of Israel for many generations to come, they never fully recovered the power and influence they had during my life. The leadership vacuum created by my final act allowed Israel to reorganize and begin to more effectively resist Philistine domination. My body was recovered by my relatives, who gave me an honorable burial in the land of my ancestors. He died as he lived, some commented, with strength and controversy. While some saw me as a fallen hero, others reflected on the contradictions of my life. As the years passed, my story was told again and again in the tents of Israel. Parents narrated it to their children as both a warning and an inspiration. Samson was the strongest man who ever lived, they said, but even the strongest can fall if they stray from the ways of the Lord. My legacy was complex. On one hand, I represented the promise of what Israel could achieve with God's strength and blessing. On the other hand, my life illustrated the dangers of pride, disobedience, and carnal temptation. I became a symbol of both human strength and weakness, of divine promise and human failure. The elders discussed the meaning of my life. Why did God allow a man so full of contradictions to be a judge of Israel? They wondered. Perhaps to show us that he can use even our weaknesses to fulfill his purposes. The truth is that despite my numerous personal failures, I had fulfilled the prophecy announced by the angel before my birth. I had begun to deliver Israel from the power of the Philistines. It had not been a complete or permanent deliverance, but I had dealt significant blows that considerably weakened this formidable enemy. The historians and scribes of Israel placed me among the nation's judges, although my leadership style had been very different from that of my predecessors. While judges like Deborah and Gideon had united the tribes and led armies, I had fought mainly alone, driven by personal vengeance that, providentially, also served divine purposes for the nation. The priests taught about the Nazirite vow, using my story as an example. Consecration to God is not just a matter of external appearance, but of heart and obedience, they explained. Samson kept his hair long, but violated the spirit of his Nazirite vow many times. And when he finally lost the external sign, he also lost the divine blessing. Centuries later, when kings ruled Israel, poets and prophets still made reference to my feats. My name was mentioned alongside those of other heroes of faith, not because my life had been exemplary, but because at crucial moments I had trusted in God and had been used by Him for greater purposes. Perhaps the most enduring aspect of my legacy was to serve as a constant reminder that true strength does not reside in muscles or physical power, but in submission to God's will. Although I could tear lions apart with my bare hands and kill thousands with improvised weapons, I was defeated by my own passions and weaknesses when I strayed from the path that God had traced for me. And yet, even in my fall and humiliation, when all seemed lost, I found redemption in one last act of faith. Blind, captive, and ridiculed, I finally recognized my complete dependence on God and submitted to His will as I had never done before. In my greatest weakness, I found my greatest strength. My life has ended, but my story continues to resonate through the generations. I am Samson, son of Manoah, from the tribe of Dan, a Nazirite from the womb, judge of Israel for 20 years, and one of the most unlikely deliverers that God has ever raised. Ultimately, my name endures not for my victories, but for God's victory through me despite my failures. I am a living testimony, or rather, a dead witness, that there is no situation so desperate that God cannot use it for his purposes, no fall so deep from which God cannot redeem the one who turns to him with a sincere heart. As they would write centuries later, by faith, Samson, who drew strength from weakness, became powerful in battle. My strength finally came not from my hair, nor from my muscles, but from renewed faith in the God who had called me from the womb. My name is Samson, and this is my story. A story of strength and weakness, of divine calling and human failure, of fall and redemption. A story that continues to speak through the generations, reminding everyone that true greatness is not in perfection, but in fulfilling the purpose for which God has created us, even through our imperfections.